Number one, what kind of testing, quality controls do you perform when you release some software? All of these questions, as I mentioned before, are completely relevant both for external vendors, internal candidates, and external contractors, okay? So good ones to ask. We have seen on some external projects that we've had to rescue a range of quality in terms of testing. So in some cases, you'll get people to a point where, hey, it compiles, and then they'll ship the code. The problem with that is that just because something compiles doesn't mean that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Doesn't mean that it's going to work in all different test cases. And ultimately, if they get to that point of, hey, it compiles, it's good to go, you're going to have problems with the software in the end. It's not going to be particularly robust. On the other side of that scale, you get developers who will always, maybe they're doing so-called TDD, which is test-driven development, and they might be aiming for, even if they're not using TDD, they might be aiming for 100% unit and integration test coverage. Now, depending upon the size of your budget, that can be a way to go. I know that there are organizations out there, very big ones, that use this very successfully. So an example would be Netflix. Netflix, pretty famous for actually their testing and the way that they handle their releases. They randomly attack their own network and randomly switch off servers because they figure if our infrastructure cannot cope with that, then we've got a problem that we need to fix. And so the kind of tests that Netflix do is, really off the charts, and very few people strive for that. But what I have seen is that excessive or maybe compulsive attention to being able to complete 100% unit tests, 100% integration testing, it can actually add to the technical debt of the platform, or the application that you're building. And the reason for that is that if you need to make a change and you're going to end up breaking a whole bunch of tests, then in order to make that change, you've actually got twice or maybe 3 times as much code that you have to change to be able to do that. That's where the technical debt comes in. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't be using unit and integration testing, because ideally they should, because it will end up being a more robust product if they do, a more robust application. The trick is to get the right balance. So I personally don't think that 100% coverage is a good thing to attempt to aim for. Not everybody agrees with me there. So, there is a bit of, shall we say, scope for disagreement on this particular point. What we tend to do is aim for enough coverage that it's going to catch cases where functionality could change in the future, and you need to be aware of that and alert to that. Well, ideally, it's sort of at the point that you're working on the code rather than later on down the track when you've put it in production and then you realize, oh, hey, look, that calculation has changed and we're no longer collecting the correct amount of tax. And that's probably bad because I don't think the tax office looks at that particularly kindly. So unit testing, integration testing, and ideally also manual quality assurance. So in my opinion, some kind of manual QA is a very beneficial thing to have on a project. That doesn't mean that you should be entirely reliant upon manual QA, but it definitely has its place. And the two together, automated testing and manual testing, work well to be able to deliver a more robust product. Ideally, the end result of doing this and having these processes in place is that you'll get functional code. Now, an important distinction to make here is that just because code is functional does not mean that it's high quality code. It means that it should do what it is intended to do. And the two are not quite the same thing. Nonetheless, if you're asking these questions and you don't get these kinds of answers and you're just getting this kind of, oh, hey, it compiles, so we ship it, then that's a bit of a red flag and you kind of want to be careful about that.